Hi. All right, so our last video for the orientation is going to look at the term paper. I'm going to go back to the class materials page here, and the term paper assignment instructions are here. So we'll click on that so we can look at that together. All right. And so the term paper, and hopefully, you got to make sure if you haven't already that you either download this to your device or print it out to have a copy. But essentially, the term paper is going to ask you to choose one of the DSM-5 diagnoses that we're going to talk about during this semester. And really could be any diagnosis from the DSM-5. There might be some where you propose it to me and I suggest to you that you do something different, but there's not going to be many of those. And the suggestion would be about how hard I think your research or writing is going to be, not about anything else. So the term paper is worth 200 points plus those 50 additional points for the foundational work. You're going to pick a diagnosis. I suggest here that when you're writing, you're thinking about a hypothetical family that has had a member diagnosed with this specific disorder that you're focusing on. You don't have to tell me anything about the family. You're not going to write about the family. But too often, students, especially undergraduate students, are writing to their professor, and that's the only audience you're ever writing to. And that gets complicated because you know that I know more about these disorders than you likely do. And so then you're not writing from a place of expertise. You're writing to somebody who has more expertise than you. I really want you to write this paper as if you need to be the expert, as if you need to do research to become an expert so that you can inform other people. And so that's the reason I give you this kind of hypothetical audience to imagine as you're writing. So you pick the disorder, and then you're going to complete academic research to answer the questions that you see listed here. So what does the research tell you about the likely cause or causes of this disorder? What we're going to talk about is etiology. It's going to be a word you become very familiar with. What does the research tell you about the best treatment options for the disorder? And that should include both medication-based treatment as appropriate and non-medication treatments as appropriate. And then what is the prognosis or outcome for the individual? What is life likely to be like for them? Are they likely to experience this disorder for a long time? Are they likely to recover? And in addition, what is the family's experience likely to be like in the short term and long term? These questions are going to require you not just to find sources on the topic of depression, for example, but to make sure that you're finding resources that have information that is specifically focused on answering one or more of these questions. So that's a little different, perhaps, than what some of the research that you all might have had to do for earlier papers in other classes, because you're not just writing about depression, you're finding out answers to very specific questions. So be sure you keep that in mind when you start doing your literature research. You are going to need 8 peer-reviewed articles, all of which have to be published in the last 5 years. So let's say, because there's a little delay in when they're available electronically, let's say from 2015 on. Anything earlier than 2015, you shouldn't be using. If there's something you're really attached to that you have found, and you can run that by me, but it really should be 2015 or later, and I'm really only going to approve exceptions if they're pretty close to 2015 and not much older than that. So 8 peer-reviewed articles. I'm happy to help anyone who needs help with understanding how to find those using our databases. And you should be, for your own sake, you should be using our databases. If you try to do this with a Google search, you very well may come up with things that aren't actually peer-reviewed, and that's not going to be helpful to you. Our librarians are available for online or in-person one-on-one appointments to help you, and if you do that and you bring the assignment with you, you'll find that it is an immense help. Every student I've ever known who has chosen to do that has been very, very happy and has wound up with some really good resources from doing that. So that is my first suggestion for you in terms of getting help using the databases, even if you've used them before. It's just a great thing to do. So you're going to use those 8 peer-reviewed articles for that, to answer those questions. In addition, you also are going to need, the last section of the paper asks you to imagine the resources that the typical person or the average family would use to find out more about a disorder that is occurring in their family. And the average person, even you and me in an average day, are going, the average person is going to just Google. And so for this last section where I want you to compare what they would find, the average person would find, to what you've found through your peer-reviewed research, you're going to just Google your topic and see what comes up. Just take like 4 things from the first return on the Google search. And they are only to be used for this last section. So they cannot be used in the main body of the paper at all. That you're going to compare what you found in your academic research to the sources that you find through this Google search. And you're going to look at these questions as a way of focusing that. So you'll need at least 4 of those popular sources or websites. Overall, I imagine this paper for most of you is going to be 5 to 8 pages long. And it should be organized in the following sections, and you should be using section headings as I outlined here when I talk about APA style. So you should have a section called causes, a section called treatment, etc. These are each graded with the same weight, so they really should, at least the first 3, should all have the same level of attention and length in your paper. You are going to need to apply APA style, and so you need a cover sheet, running heads, section headings, works cited page, and APA style in text citations throughout your paper. I'm happy to provide guidance for that if you need it, but the internet and our library especially have lots of guidance to offer on that as well. The final paper is due on December 1st, so you have the whole semester to do it. But because you have foundational elements, you really don't have all semester to wait. So the first piece that's due to me is October 24th, and that's your works cited page. So you need to have all of your sources together by then and put together an APA style works cited page. And then you also need to have an outline of your whole paper by November 15th. And so, a couple of weeks before the actual paper is due, you're going to submit to me an outline where I get to say, yeah, this looks great, or you seem to be missing this section, or I hope you have more detail to talk about, about what you mean by psychotherapy and what types of therapy, and so I'll give you some guidance to get you on track if that's necessary. You can see the grading rubric here. I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of how many points out of 200 each of the components is worth. I will suggest that as you're writing your paper, and certainly before you hand in your paper, that you look at this again and make sure you're not missing anything, because it's always a little heartbreaking for me to have to take away 35 points because you didn't include the last section where you compared to popular sources, or you didn't have any citations in your paper. So just make sure you go through this again and see, do I have what's going to earn the points here. And that really is it for the term paper. If we come back to the class materials page, right? So in terms of the things that are listed, and these obviously will have chapter work mixed in with them and not just be just these by the time we're starting the class. So you have the instructions here. By the 19th of September, I really would like you to submit what disorder you'd like to focus on. That is not a graded assignment, and nothing bad happens to you if you don't submit that, except that if you're off track. And so sometimes people pick disorders that they've heard of, but in fact are not part of the official list of disorders that the American Psychiatric Association uses. So submitting that to me is an opportunity for me to tell you that, or for me to ask you to narrow it down, or suggest ways in which you might narrow it down or expand it or something. So it is a good idea to submit there. And then the works cited page Dropbox is on here, and the outline Dropbox is on here, and then the term paper outline is on here. So all of everything you need for the term paper is also on this class materials page. Again, the practical questions thread is a great place to ask questions about the term paper. It is a better place than emailing me because others can chime in if they already know the answer, but others can also see the conversation we have, your question, my answer, and that's helpful to everyone. Okay, so hopefully these 3 videos have been useful, but please also ask questions as you have them. Have a good day.